And now something new for a change. I was thinking about what video I would make this week. I have some ideas already as a backup, some even with recorded voiceover. But then I thought about making a video about Office Christmas Party, a terrible comedy which I recently saw, and just ramble a bit about it. But when I was about to record the audio, I just wasn't in the mood to talk about another bad piece of media, especially as in that one Jason Bateman is deep-throating an ice boner. I didn't want to talk about the terrible direction, bad acting, awful script and pathetic jokes. I mean, if you like that kind of movie, more power to you. That's fine for me, but watching it was kind of awful for me personally. And it didn't even hit the low expectations that I had. So instead, I will recommend 5 thrillers, which are all pretty good and more or less obscure and not well known, but definitely worth your time. They are hidden gems, so to say, if you can stomach movies which have dark subject matters and are kind of disturbing. If you watch my other video reviews or most of my film reviews, you won't be surprised. Well, maybe you would be surprised that these aren't trash. There is no particular order and these are no reviews, I just wanted to talk about good movies for a change. The first movie I want to talk about is probably the most depressing one of the bunch. Sion Sono's Cold Fish. More of a drama than a thriller actually, which shows an ordinary family man, Shamoto, who unfortunately meets a man called Morata. Both men run exotic fish stores and Morata is starting to be a mentor to Shamoto. But soon the viewer learns that Morata has a dark and destructive side. He is manipulative, violent, and a conman who destroys lives in the worst ways. Shamoto, who already had a miserable life, will soon learn how destructive things will get, and he and his family will descend into absolute madness. I was kind of a fanboy of Sono after watching his very upbeat and very long Love Exposure, and I also appreciated Tag. But after watching a couple of his other movies, I saw some repetition unfortunately. I haven't seen most of his movies yet, but some of the later ones are quite similar to those I've already watched. But Love Exposure and Cold Fish are still kind of masterpieces in my opinion. This is more of a drama, and while there is violence, it doesn't get too extreme concerning the splatter, and most of it happens off screen. But it is quite an uncomfortable viewing and the movie really descends into madness and violence towards the end. It's a good watch. Next on the list is the cult movie Maniac, also known as Alexandre Aja's Maniac, starring Elijah Wood and Nora Arnezeda. A remake of the also not bad Maniac from the 80s starring Joe Spinell, which is also a cult movie. The remake stands on its own though, and while I think the story itself isn't that special, the execution really elevates this. Wood is starting as a disturbed man called Frank, who is repairing mannequins and is living a lonely life. He is more than socially awkward and has psychosis because of his childhood trauma, which is explored in memory fragments in the movie. He tries to make contact with women, but it always ends in murder, as he can't control himself and suffers from hallucinations and violent outbursts. What really makes this special is the execution though, as I mentioned before. The movie is mostly shot from the point of view of Frank, so we see most of the movie through his eyes. There are moments when the camera leaves his view, but this can be explained as out-of-body experiences in moments of extreme stress or ecstasy. It also tries to imitate Drive a bit with its music choices and the high contrast and colors. But be aware, this one is probably the bloodiest movie I recommend in this video. And it's really not for the faint of heart. It's also the excessive violence which makes the movie a bit cheesy towards the end in my opinion. The scene with the knife always takes me out of the movie a bit. But the acting is great, the perspective changes things up drastically, and the soundtrack follows me for weeks every time I watch it. It follows me just like a stalking maniac. Talking about great camera work and colors, Krzysztof Kieslowski's A Short Film About Killing is probably one of the best movies I have ever seen. The depressing look at society in Eastern Europe in the late 80s makes use of special color filters to give the movie a dark and gritty look, combined with the urban environments of Eastern Europe and the perspective of a loner looking for someone to kill, makes this movie unique. It was part of Kieslowski's Decalogue series, which is a 10-part TV show in which every episode focuses on another commandment. I haven't watched the show yet, but I already own it and will probably watch it soon. A short film about killing is based on the episode, which focuses on You Shall Not Kill and is extended into feature-length film. There are only 2 people who die in the movie and a dead cat, but it manages to make these deaths so important in what they represent and how important they are for the story. Unfortunately, the main menu of the British Blu-ray already shows the murder happening and takes away from the impact that it would have. But I highly recommend the movie, and except for the spoiler in the main menu, the British Blu-ray is also great. I will continue with talking about fantastic camera work with the next movie, the Austrian movie Angst, also known as Schizophrenia. The movie is based on an actual crime which occurred in Austria, in which a murderer gets released out of prison only to commit an even worse and devastating crime. The camera work in the movie is unbelievable, as I can literally not comprehend how some of the shots were made. There are scenes which look like those from Requiem for a Dream, in which the camera is strapped onto the actors. But here the camera and the actors seem to move around, and that in close spaces. But there are even more endless shots which look so unique and make the viewer tense on purpose. I always think of this one as a movie which tried to be an exploitation movie but ended up being a great piece of filmmaking and art. Unfortunately, the murder scenes are a bit awkward at times, but overall the film is so good that I can overlook these issues. The worst thing about the movie though is it's so obscure you can hardly get it anywhere. I had to buy the French Blu-ray, which was quite expensive, but it's a good version of the movie actually. You see, for the anniversary many years ago there was a German re-release on DVD. But that version was missing the intro and makes some scenes of violence towards the end darker, so you can't see the details. The French version isn't darker, and you can select if you want to see the intro or not. The last movie on the list, and a movie which has become one of my favorite and probably most watched movies, is I Saw the Devil, starring Choi Min-sik from Oldboy fame and Lee Byung-hun from A Bittersweet Life, and many other great movies. Directed by Kim Jae-won, who had a long streak of great movies, even though I didn't like his recent work. I Saw the Devil is a revenge action thriller with a psychological component, in which a paranoid, maniacal woman killer and abuser murders the wrong woman, which starts a cycle of unimaginable cruelty and suffering. Also fantastically shot and with a great color palette which is giving the whole movie an otherworldly look. This is an unforgettable trip, and the almost 2.5 hours runtime just fly by. The twist in the story is that the woman which is murdered by Choi Min-sik's character is the fiancée of Lee Byung-hun's character, who is a special agent for the South Korean Secret Service. While this sounds generic, the viewer will know that this is no ordinary revenge story when Lee's character doesn't kill Choi's character once he has the chance. Instead, he leaves him only to continue the hunt once his prey is back on his feet. This is of course dangerous and leads to more death and tragedy. It's also, together with Maniac, one of the most violent movies on this list, but it's worth the watch in my opinion. It doesn't get too over the top, even though there's quite a bit of action, but mostly small scale, but with high stakes. I also love the score and the acting is fantastic, with Choi Min-sik being a great villain and Lee Byung-hun playing the stoic avenger so emotionless for the most part that it's creepy. This one also comes in 2 versions. The Korean version, which is cut in violence but adds some scenes with additional plot and one sex scene, and the uncut international version, which I actually prefer. And these are my random recommendations. There is a theme of murder in these movies, and they are all dark and kind of depressing, but they are definitely worth a watch. So if you are in the mood for a dark and disturbing movie, which is also very good, give one of those a try. But I will add the trailers in the description. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you like, you can follow me here or on my letterboxd, where I post reviews constantly and have reviewed these movies already. I will also add the information for my letterboxd in the description. See you in the next video.
Ja? Ich schieße jetzt.